good, Rex?
Story.
Yeah, there's some good. Yeah, just so good. How are you doing?
What?
How are you doing?
Not getting a lot of sleep last night.
Yeah. For a minute, they kind of late.
Yeah. I go to LOU, so it's like the one day I'm in town, I want to see all my friends, but then I'm out late. So.
I was in Hawaii.
Good.
I know a lot of people
We would be back here though, because they're renovating the whole school.
Oh, did you go to Apple Valley?
Yeah.
Pretty sick.
Um,
Yeah, this school's big. I was really surprised.
yeah.
What are you studying in
Economics.
I'm not gonna do that. I don't know about it. I don't know if that might use it.
Yeah, I thought you were pretty good in that.
I don't like math, but I think I like economics.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
the thing, like, I was in a math program at the U, where I took like Calc 3 as a junior in high school. And so like I was really good at math, but I just like, did not enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather done maths. Anyways, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. First is framework. 1 is ideal theories. 2 abstract to motivate the descriptive agent. It fails as a fundamental ethic. That's Mills 1. Ethics guides our action. Ideal theory deeply anti-ethical and modeling humans. Ideal model abstracting away from reality. Crucial interaction. Shall historically subordinate groups skeptical of validity and ideas. Justice, liberty, independence is shared by you, not me. And ideal theories abstraction normalizes systems of oppression. Exempts white philosophers from addressing white supremacy and ethics. That's Mills 2. Abstract and ideal theory, not innocent, tradition, American political culture, representing the egalitarian liberal democracy, free of exclusionary structures, even when they admit racism practices, little see an ideology, fall back on essentially inclusive liberal democracy, racism, sexism, anomalies, despite exploitation, slavery, exclusion, interpreting the policy, still thought liberal democratic ideals, not involving disastrous for structural repression and rationalize the status quo. Second, only a non-ideal approach grounded in the obscure nature of ethics and guide action. That's Mills 3. A non-ideal approach is superior, recognizing the problems of ethics and by the commitment to moral human society and interaction and being shaped by social structures, social location, finance, and reality to give them investment interest in maintaining things. 3. Everything is epistemological, especially true in the context of language. Words like can and cannot escape their social meaning. Mills 4. Social epistemology, sailing the individual, not make up categories, but inherent in language, socially required other socially mediated from the very beginning, concept will not be neutral, but towards a certain understanding, concept and understanding to make up an external relation to a large architecture. Thus, prefer non-ideal theory, any ethical theory that is proven ideal is not normative. Reject ideal theory that stands for dominant discourse, idealized white philosophy. That's the only way to open up space to introduce historically well-located forms of knowledge. And everyday interactions manifest themselves through the dialectical whiteness. Every space demonstrates the uncertain yet overbearing power that the white gaze holds over other bodies. The white gaze fractures blackness through a process of phenomenal return where the broad constantly becomes otherwise, but forever locked in semi-auto reconstruction. Yancey 17. Returning to the void when the elevator through outer gates, I begin conversational language, spatiality, I move my body within the elevator with an non-calculated fashion, pain, noise, creative the movement of my hands in position, my feet out, my feet in the elevator, similarly my sense and take it, becoming still every day to say the Lord, to break down my panic to experience. How did not have an operational phone, my previously familiar space, my being had become my trap, in my movement also affected my white man's gaze, I dare not move suddenly away to spatiality, the elevator has become white, normativity, pain, neutral, attention, my body movements, my lovely body goes back into the challenge, gaze, the white woman just trust my bodily component, and I feel into uncomfortable awareness of my own body, like America, gaze, imposed, assured form within the live semiotic space of the elevator. The white man has taken my body from a scene of fundamentally different meaning back to here seen as active epistemic violence, and spaces like the elevator are instantly tied to the historical forces that drive the black body under the white gaze. Whiteness is only made coherent only in a categorical relation to the other, namely the white blood self to signify the black. Yancey 2. Within the larger history of whiteness in America, whiteness is the thesis of blackness, the antithesis within the elevator, white man claims to identity of ethnicity, or distant difference if we think the white self and the black other, the black body and the white gaze is shared exterior. There's only the way seen. The white woman feels her identity is how she constructs me. White privilege allows me the same non-existence as a thinking function, and self-surveillance when is the black body hybrid visible. The process separates whiteness and civilization runs kind of hard and enables gratuitous violence. Yancey 3. White seeks to turn black seeks to prove modes of visibility. They look at the white subject, trouble the black subject inferior with bars of black subject seeing herself, but through the white gaze, eventually realize my presence, the way to allow my tendency to turn his face and the black body already focused already in the other. The white gaze creates a doubleness within psyche, leading to destructive powers of the white self-surveillance. Black body was already been considered consequences to go over centuries of no whiteness, like an invisible thing that blackness never visible. The both of us whiteness is on the recognized dualism as a created under the white gaze. Blackness is becoming constructed in the inverse image of white. This ending for the true gaze, the body is never hidden but appears there. Thus, the role of the ballot is to interrogate the transparency of whiteness or black black studies and pedagogy that navigates violence is necessary to provide an accessible normative framework. Only by deconstructing universal notion of ethics changing by right discipline can we create change. Loyala 14. Discipline, if able to retaking strategies, knowledge what is needed, that careful elaboration of black studies in relation to the other, knowledge of the human is no longer considered the realm of particular relegation of black thought, the particularity only in first slavery, colonialism, segregation, the function of blackness, both inside and outside modern sensitivity for general theory, across history, ideology, politics, culture, the system, science, study of black life is concerned with the rise of science and definition of human and self-necessity, the recalibration once non-white subordinate subject become part of it, black studies become humanity as ideological background, or actually the human functions, the essential knowledge, object of knowledge, embracing approach, like closing thing, otherwise said in 3 points before additionally A is pedagogy, the role of our justification are unique to debate and cipher education which outweighs because we frame the obligation as constituent the judge roles and educator who evaluates the best strategy. B is a role that is also a standard only black studies can be normative action for all ages removed neutrality from our discourse. C it indicts your standard violently supporting the shadow of ethics and liberalism. Black is always excluded from your theory and contention. The AC affirms a resolution as counter-surveillance, disrupting steer upon whiteness. Boundary 13. Turn against the political space of power, it's not a manifest of the violence, understanding the political welfare of the social body, make a decision about whom to let that Bible the social societies involving the norm, the religions, the value statement, inherently lacks consequence. Nothing happens when we endorse the absolute question of the ethicality of the state in itself, and the counter gaze makes a spectacle out of whiteness and teaches on power relations stolen from the white gaze only through the one he sees agency possible. The power of the right to knowing its ability to organize and intent about whiteness. Hooks 96. Spectator funding for standards and accommodational resistance to authority. The gaze always been political ones. Gaze can be gained white slave voters, money, select people looking. The gaze for politics of racialized state relation, deny their rights to gay folks. I would never dare to say in the worst of domination, the gays in the face of social domination opens up the possibility for agency to be gay. Is a side of resistance to document the power to white race, politicizing, looking in relation to look at in order to resist, and the black counter gaze counter challenges dominant white notion to show that brings back the focus back on whiteness, the basis for all systems of racialized oppression for breezy. The black gaze comes to the regime of white truth, raising black into opposition to the black gaze reproposition of what it means to black, white can only be the black gaze redirect focus back into whiteness of the racialized system of oppression, and the body is a shifting historical background. It's not inherently ontological, only dependent on the particular power of whiteness can disrupt anti-blackness, the anti-4. The body's meaning is a constant condensation while finding meanings that are the same contributing through part-related social process. The body is a shifting historical meaning subject to reconfiguration, fundamentally symbolic and presupposes third normalcy. White body with kind of identification with the black body and the white body leads something rape to the factory underview. First, a proposal. First, if you ask me, question my habits propose being CX so we can have better substance debate and avoid for hysteria. And second is debate is an educational space. Avoiding substance to engage with the one he sees is a way to dodge important question regarding wasting inside of debate. Smith 13. The reality based on debate is content by single choice to be made by running to retraction distance itself from the interior reality. Competitors make up rules to keep black debaters breaking the rules to escape our conversation. Debate is not just a game of a learning environment. Second, the concept of fairness as objective standards is always and always reflected in the dominant party. Their subjective wrongly being objective and impose upon the world judgment under a fair standard will favor the privilege. Like 92. We cleverly give power to the term fair without the objective approach is more fair rather embodies the stronger party. One fairness punches away from the way which stronger parties have inside interest and short culture be around them in the way judging action. Second, the purpose of debate the substance education. Let me drop the argument so they can continue to debate elsewhere in the flow in terms of the most benefits. My intro provides the most. You can put it at the second.
Okay, where was the extract?
That was just extended.
Oh, okay. So you should cut it, you didn't read these.
This? Everything now.
And then you extend the drop the arc.
Drop the arc wasn't extended. That was just like the purpose of the base subset education. It just wasn't tied to drop the argument.
Oh, okay. Ready?
You want the stand?
Well, CX.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do it first.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah, give me a second. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. What is whiteness?
What is whiteness? I would say that it's the concept of, I guess, not just non-blackness, but I guess it would just be white people in like as a general.
What is a white person?
What is a white person? I would say someone that identifies as white Caucasian. I think it's very clear, like as in terms of like a term.
So anyone who identifies as Caucasian is a white person?
White, yeah. I think you can also like anyone that's like, I'm not saying that just whiteness is a concept, like it's not exclusive to white people, right? Like there are concepts of whiteness that can be exclusive to like people of color, right? Like there are white concepts that like Asian people have, like, or black people can have, like things like color blindness as well can be like white concepts.
How do we know what is or is not a white concept?
How do we not know what it is or what it's not? I don't think Yancey takes a stance on what
so like why is
color
blindness a white concept,
yeah, so
but other forms of black people are not white concepts?
I'm confused on what the question would entail.
So you said color blindness is something that black people can have that is a white concept. How do we
not a white concept, right? It's an act of whiteness. Like I think
how do we
that
distinguish between acts of whiteness
would
and acts of
inherently
non-whiteness?
resist or would inherently like entail like some sort of like white domination, right? Or some sort of aspect of white supremacy that allows and like fuels these.
Okay, that's circular. What is white? What is white supremacy?
What is white supremacy? I think it would be the belief that like the white race is.
What is the white race? How do we know if someone's part of the white race?
I mean, you're white.
Okay,
right?
So like I'm white. Is someone who is like biracial, one of their parents is white, and they're phenotypically white, are they white?
I would say that like they're half white, right? Like they can still embody concept of whiteness. I would think they would.
What's a concept of whiteness?
What is?
You said they can embody concepts of whiteness. What's a concept of whiteness?
I'm like super confused on what the question.
Okay, that's fine. I'll move
like
on.
The concept of whiteness.
That's
is
fine.
like,
I'll move on. The
I think it would be white
Yancey evidence
superiority.
in the framework says that blackness is constructed in opposition to whiteness.
Yeah.
What about other people of color who are not black?
I think we take a stance on how whiteness is operated. I think we can also learn about like how we treat black bodies in terms of like in dialectic to whiteness, in terms of like treating like how other forms of racialized oppression also occur. Like for example, like there are a lot of similarities between like Asian oppression and black oppression as well. I think the Hooks evidence is really good on like the intersectionality that other types of oppression have with others.
What is gratuitous violence?
Yeah, gratuitous violence is basically just unlimited violence against, like particularly gratuitous violence against the black body, but it would just be like acts of violence that are not only just violence, but they are extreme forms of violence. For example, police brutality would be a form of.
Would the Holocaust be an example of gratuitous violence?
I mean, in terms of gratuitous, I think that we're getting the definition. Gratuitous violence is like a term of art specifically in like race-based literature, where it relies on some ontological claim. So like gratuitous violence, like Wilderson, is like ontological violence.
So why isn't violence? Well, because Wilderson actually answered that. Like the Holocaust was a term of like temporary contingent violence, whereas black was constitutive, i.e. that the Jews went into the Holocaust and came out Jews, but the blacks went into the slave trade, or the Africans went into the slave trade and came out black. Okay.
There was a change of identity that occurred when the Middle Passage occurred. That's the ontology one though, but like we don't.
Wait, so the arguments in the underview where CH checks drop the argument and then the two pieces of evidence?
Yeah.
Okay, I have 255 left.
Yeah. Are you gonna write that down somewhere, or should I?
Yeah, I wrote it.
Okay.
The order. So it'll be 5 total, but after the first 2, I'm gonna go to the theory underview.
Okay.
Because I'll do all the theory stuff, and then I'll go back to the rest of the blocks, and I'll make sure this happens.
Make sure you're loud because there's like an AC down.
Very
good. So 2, then the case, then more, like the underview, then more offs.
Yeah.
So it's 2 off, and then underview, and then the other 3.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
What?
I haven't debated more than like 2 off in 31 times. It's a great change of pace.
5 up, right?
What?
5 up. Total.
Yeah. If I can get through that. Everyone ready?
Give me a second.
We'll use slow and clear.
Got it. Yeah, you're good.
Good. Interpretation: the affirmative must defend a governmental action or democracy bringing about a state of affairs in which there is a substantial increase of information about candidates for public office released to the public at the expense of the candidate's right to privacy. Right to know requires policies that make information public. The free dictionary policies and laws that make information available to a person who can demonstrate need ought to be indicates a state of affairs and obligates an actor with the ability to bring about that state of affairs. One ought to be norms prescribed the obligatory state of affairs to achieve. Ought to be normative ability and ought to be normative disguised that leaves the actor unspecified. This can be remedied by saying actors are those who are responsible for seeing that the state of affairs is achieved. Violation: they defend the resolution as a general principle or the value statement. They don't defend any implementation of a policy, and their accuracy is super vague. Our interpretation is key. These affirmatives forced to pick a specific world and implementation for that world. They cannot be shifty about what they endorse. The negative gets to clash with their specific argumentation. The impact is ground. Their interpretation includes pretty much all utilitarian objections since they can no link counterpoints of distance as long as they defend vague, meaningless value statements. Any political issue, process issue, or country specific issues lost it pushes negative and absolutist positions that reject the nuanced clash process of debate. Ground is key to fairness in education since the ability to make core arguments have a shot at the round. Debates abilities of dialogue. Second is topic education. Specification about what exactly happens in the world. The affirmative is necessary to in-depth debate about the topic. This isn't NSD, nationals, and our education shouldn't be limited. Which value is better in a vacuum? The best education debate provides in the weeds of every issue. There are substantial issues in the way of right to know laws because how different laws release mechanisms like physical records or the internet affect privacy in different ways. Topic education isn't impacted. The debates we aren't having are valuable and there's no point to the activity. We should make the most out of the resolution. Fairness to voters since it includes the judge's ability to evaluate a layer if there was unfair debates. A game that needs rules to function. Education of voters since a portable out-of-round benefit and the reason schools fund debate. Drop debate of the round is skewed from the beginning and the tuner can't read new dissets. It's too late for takesies, backsies on their terrible model. Competing interpretation, deciding topicality question, how the should debate the topic requires active justification or review story will dispute reasonability. No RBI presenting a fair and debatable model of affirmation is their burden. The negative should get the noticeability to question that they should have defense of their model just like they should have defense of their inherency or solvency. Next off. Interpretation. If debaters disclose full text, they must not post the full text of cards in the site box, but must upload an open source document with the full text of their cards to clarify. They don't need to open source with highlighting. They just need, they can just open source a doc with the full text of cards. They just can't full text in the site box. Violation. I have screenshots to standard. 1. Pre-round prep. Prep becomes a process when you don't make your tags bold and just throw a massive amounts of text on the wiki page, which makes it nearly impossible to locate certain arguments. Discourages tricks. You can just hide a bunch of blippy arguments in your massive amounts of useless text, which is prevented. If facts are easy to sort out, you're more upfront about your arguments. Key to education since we aren't able to properly engage your arguments since you've intentionally made your wiki page a mess. Second, NDCA rules. The wiki explicitly states that on the site's page, quote, you should not paste full text cards to your only sites. If you want to disclose open source, upload a document on the next page as well. I have a screenshot of the rule in the doc. Skip the card, but independently this answers any concerns about our intro being arbitrary or unpredictable because it's literally the wiki rule. So it's not my job to tell you the wiki follow the wiki rules in the same way it's not my job to tell you to follow speech times. Now the underview. Starting on CX checks. 8 is not verifiable. You don't know what they would have said. You don't know what they would have said in CX. Readers are taught to be shifty in CX, especially in defending vague, meaningless value statements. B points, it doesn't solve pre-round prep. I don't know what the affirmative actually defends until CX, which means that if I wait until CX to clarify what the app does, then that means that I don't have enough time to be able to put together a research case neck because they could specify anything that I'm not prepared for. C point is that it prevents me from asking other strategic questions. I shouldn't have to waste all of CX asking clarification questions about what they're going to defend. D point is that 7 allows infinite abuse. B's incentivize have to be as abusive as possible and then just shift their interpretation into the Smith evidence. The group their Smith evidence Delgado evidence to be is fundamentally the game. Fairness controls the interlink to education because strategy always determines what sort of positions we read. Unfairness is inevitable because we read things like resource disparities outside of debate. The ballot can only rectify who won a given round, which means that we should still try to minimize the amount of unfairness that occurs, and it doesn't justify you issuing the division of ground and predictable limits provided by the resolution. Drop the argument doesn't solve because it means leads to a 1 error restart and severance where I'm constantly forced to restart. Next off. Cap K, the focus on the white gaze is fundamentally neoliberal, events strategic politics to challenge capital. Read 13 neoliberalism says a serious problem with whiteness, social reifies whiteness is transhistorical social category, chiefs whiteness existing prior to social context, discourse functioning kind of moralistic expose rather than basic strategic politics. The programs say a demand abolish whiteness, fixation, reason historical dynamics and contradiction of continuing to talk about racial liberalism formations that invoke originals and reify recent disconnected from historical circumstances and social structure. Racism begins an independent variable and moralistic argument that is ultimately defeatist. In their theory, a historical code obscures capitalism as a driving force of anti-blackness. Hyder 18 racism was the reason of white supremacy in a concrete and objective historical process. There were word white didn't appear until 1691. The Irish illustrates racial oppression not based on skill, color, practice of sexual exploitation. Production were established in Ireland. Slavery existed in ancient Greece and Rome. The first Africans put to work as indentured servants. There was no legal differentiation. European indentured labor is based on voluntary migration incentive. With not sufficient bacon, rebellion, instructional alliance was an accidental threat to the ruling class had been prevented forever. The ruling class shifted its labor force decisively towards African slaves and ideology, the inferiority of Africans in order to rationalize forced labor and had to incorporate Europeans in the category of the white race. And capitalism causes war, violence, environmental destruction, and extinction. Robinson, working origins and global prices and overaccumulation and concentration of price in one place and to represent price of a whole system can be then develop all these dimensions, climate change, impending collapse of agricultural systems, starting building system, classification, ecological limits of reproduction, the activity of violence is unprecedented, computers, wars during surplus population, alienated from the record of autonomy, subject control, and destruction. The alternatives that theorize through Marxist materialism, which contest the political efficacy and descriptive accuracy. The one you see by returning to conceptual tools long central to the American black radical tradition. That's Ferguson 15. Socialism and Marxism are integral parts of African American history and culture. Harrison, Caton, Robinson, Davis, and McLennan, materialistic cosmology and ontology presents this reality independent of our consciousness. For having seen materiality and that this reality is noble, social world is stratified ontology with class relations, form social processes, cultural studies give less attention to material conditions that relativize objective character of the black experience. All exists in intersectionality, matrix with domination. Black American class may be brought to the forefront, discarding analytical notions such as human capital, intersectionality that discount the determinate role of material class concentration. We need systematic building of historical, economic, political, Marxist knowledge. Cut it at knowledge. The next off, counterpoint text in a democracy. The public's right to know ought to be valued above the right to privacy for white candidates. Only privacy better allows black people to avoid the gaze of whiteness and coding by the state while allowing counter gaze and surveillance of white people. Next off, critique link John brackets in the word oppressed in order to replace the word black in his Yancey evidence within the framework here. The violation, they reduce blackness to instantiations of the white imaginary since only white people see blackness immediately as oppressed. Their author Yancey 08 in philosophy the embodied self is bracketing and deemed irrelevant to the we are told to reason from nowhere. The white philosopher seems to speak for all of his without mentioning his race identity. Whiteness of obligate as a foreign authority speak from nowhere for everyone's empowering yields the pleasure of self-forgetting. Black bodies live realities reduced instantiations of white imaginary embedded within the social historical interstices of white effort at self-construction physics. Black people impact blackness as negativity is bad only allows for more catharsis and no hope for change, not a question of their policy but of their discourse and rhetoric. The case. The role of ballot is to vote for the better debater. Anything else is self-serving, arbitrary, and begs the question of the rest of the debate. Skip the first card. The act doesn't solve carving out spaces in universities that separates us from the political sphere, absolves us of ethical responsibilities, and segments the political that undermines coalition building and efforts to build solidarity across communities. Toscana 11. The dynamic of state of nations mobilization serves to further entrench structures of power than oppositional cultures, a sense of emergency, council of deputy, retreat, and enclaves intend to prefigure the very future they are powerless to bring about. Though small but beautiful, defeating insignificance, ornitholizing politics, capable of envisioning collective controls, and indefensible requirement, withdrawal will barely register. Cut it out, registry.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead. Let me know when you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. Status of the alternative?
Dispositional.
Dispositional, what are the conditions?
I can kick it if you make it firm. Actually, conditional.
Okay, so it's condo.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What's the status of the counterclaim?
Condo.
Alright, what's the net benefit? How is this just not the app? Like,
because the app defends the resolution as a general principle, the counterclaim picks out of black candidates. So, black candidates should not be forced to disclose information about themselves. That way, they're better able to avoid the gaze of whiteness, knowing about that information.
wait, but when did we say that we defend implementation?
What?
Why is implementation? When did we say that we defend implementation?
What?
When did we say we defend
implementation? Like, this is regardless of, I think, A, if you're just gonna be like, no, like, we don't defend implementation, that previously abused on the first T violation. But second is that, even if you don't defend implementation, I would say that the counterclaim's value statement is better than the affirmative value statement, because the counterclaim affirms a value statement in which black people are able to remain unintelligible to the white gaze, where the affirmative affirms a value statement where black people are forced to reveal info about themselves.
Yeah, okay, let's go to the voters, or let's go to the voters. What comes first, fairness or education? Or are they equal? Fairness comes first?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then that was just like the theoretical justifications, right? Like
what?
That was like the fairness of the voter, like precludes like judges' ability to evaluate the layer, like the procedural question one, right? Like that was the warrant.
True.
Okay, yeah.
What?
The procedural question argument, right?
What?
Was the judge? Okay, yeah. I was just asking.
Wait,
I was asking
why fairness is a
I was
voter?
asking for the warrant.
Oh, for why fairness is a voter?
Yeah, I was just confused.
Debate's a game. where both sides should have a relatively equal shot at accessing the ballot.
Can you explain? Let's go to the critique. Can you explain the Re13? What's the warning in the Re13 evidence? Why?
So focusing on like abolishing whiteness in the white gaze is sort of fundamentally reactive politics, where we're constantly focusing on abolishing whiteness and getting rid of whiteness.
So is getting rid of? Do you prove why whiteness is a good thing?
No. So our argument is that the focus on abolishing whiteness means that we never sort of isolate the and prefigure our politics to what we do once we get rid of whiteness. I.e., if we got rid of whiteness, that wouldn't change the fact that tons of other groups besides white people oppress black people, which proves the necessity of the alternative in class-based resistance to the system rather than constantly focusing on getting rid of the white.
So the critique argues that class-based oppression is why violence occurs, racialized violence occurs, right?
So obviously class doesn't explain every form of violence,
so it doesn't.
But we would indicate that class is a better
Can class explain the app?
Yeah.
Okay, why does anti-black violence occur under the role of the ballot frame?
So the Hyder evidence.
Like why do police officers shoot black people?
Because there is a neoliberal interest in maintaining control over oppressed populations. Do you want me to explain more?
Yeah, sure, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it was like in the 70s, that was when gentrification picked up, which was sort of based in corporations' interest. And as a basis for that, they needed to ensure that like black people and other minorities were out of those areas and were sort of poor working class people that could be exploited, which is why they ramped up police control and are constantly incarcerating groups. In addition, it disproves the app's theory because it shows that like Hispanics are incarcerated at a much higher rate than black people are, which sort of disproves claims about black people, about blackness sort of being on some sort of different register or unique forms of violence that occur to black people.
Got it.
And it also explains why sort of racism occurred in the first place. Our Hyder evidence indicates that prior to 1691, the category of whiteness did not exist. It was basically invented by slavery because slave owners had an economic interest in maintaining slavery, but the reason why they shifted solely to African labor instead of continually using indentured servants was because European labor was based on voluntary migration, and there was not enough people coming over because there was no incentive to, because they knew that they would have a brutal life as an indentured servant. In addition, after Bacon's rebellion,
it's fine. It's fine. I think like starting. Actually, I don't need the time. Actually, I should put this in. Oh, yeah. We're starting on the AC and then the way he... Starting on the AC and then... the way he read it.
AC and the way he read it?
Yeah.
Where on the case?
It will start on the underview.
Which argument?
Oh, it's just like, it'll be reasonable. It'll be like framing issues, sorry, not underview, but it'll be framing issues on the theory debate. So like, reasonable.
So just flow it like where you had CX check. Anything new? Wait, I'm ready.
First, starting in cases, kind of the anti-evidence takes out theory, redefies the status quo to mean something that is fair, or good simultaneously also being oppressed by your reading theory against my will. Listen, as whiteness, your argument redefies the status quo's corrupted version of what is fair and good as a way to silence minority views or have that are specifically people of color reject the theories and assemblage of whiteness, extend the underview that we should weigh case against theory, and the case that weights determination of strategy for DB bodies as well. Then also allow cross-application in case of eradication, point of the ball about countries. Theoretical education has an operating different layers about the value point structural skew that can always be theory, double layer, because me some time skew that makes it possible even with our case that ways that algorithm moving significant while for every starting debate. See point is that education debate indicates for the city first to explore the nuances of differential literature and how it acts with different strategies in debate. Now, also you can set the use with 13 evidence identical to takes out fairness. It's completely important as to why debate is an educational base. So substantive education is a prior question because you're actually trying to just one question regarding race and actual violence against people of color, which reasons why education is a prior question. So insofar as you justify why we care about offenders and theoretical literature, we justify so why education is constituted to debate as a reason. So why education on but you also extend the Delgon 92 evidence that fairness is an impossible standard to achieve. That means we can never even cheat your pragmatic reasons. So why we should negate because fairness is literally so why concept that always say like that's why whiteness will always deemed the objective and fair standard, which reason as to why you're that's why skyscraping the substance made through 3 is the reason as to why we should drop you as well. Now to the counter to problem. Now first on the first show. On the first show, proper. First, we'll go for the counter-attribution. Proper. First, counter-attribution of the violation, except from the nominative top 2 that benefits one point is ground. The resolution we made. There's no actor specified. No city action. The resolution leaving question why we ought to evaluate inflation would be absolutely infinitely paramount to like plan because the lack of action. The resolution is simply never negatives because your generics wouldn't link anymore. The apps would just contemplate plain text. To exclude your office worse to defend over your practice or lose your killings or entities heavily because they only defend 2 values in particular instance rather than the one you see defend. The right to know is unconditionally valuable. Also means we can't shift the ranks between the situation which you value two rights which constitutionally defends it. Nature of single advocacy over to the shell proper. Now first there is no topical action on your answer to the right question evaluate. No any action demonstrating the value playing the NC for common word now be termed defense the of the world of nature involves the counter term. Second you fail to list a single position you lose when you don't defend. You just say it's a vague utilitarian justification, but you could ask me to specify we definitely solve even that you just say we don't have to specify any point with the super vague resolution lets us define any type of democracy standard public office that can still extends infinitely in your intro which excuse preparators while certain business already a reasonable explanation what we need to practice with the thanks for the round drug everyone all your voters evaluate the reason to believe the limitation be structurally be all the reasons or the center reasons the affirmatives is about substantive these why the hard case balance impossible if we win is inventory guys always a potential favor version the avalanche to be allowed to get to mitigate race and top the involved in theory every round now onto the other shop over now first counter attribution of the violation first don't one of the show super for those benefits first and accessibility there's no being actually determine the rules are super obscure as well also like night flexibility the game is harder also the infinite amount of violation you can write this is a super vague resolution this is a super vague super for the show you just got checked this is super unverbal you also in the case always the pragmatic arguments that I so why case always cases well in the rollabout always there are 2 independent justifications why a rollabout comes before a theory as well reason as to why a rollabout is a prior question of these frivolous theory as well any you voting on the would just be an example you voting on whiteness onto the critique proper now first right you can't solve it you can't actually articulate so why there's a link to the key one place to be solved in your limits and you can the hooks evidence as to why our classmates struggle or simply have to begin from the same way to whiteness the whiteness is the reason as to why these classmates struggle and also why whiteness can't explain why the police brutality because why Choi was actually shot multiple times in the back why black bodies are still being shot in the back either why just because the classmates struggle why money and monetary problems can't actually solve the second display this is a legal omission it just says that we don't begin from the classmate struggle which is and you should reject links so omission 8 the amount of links that we don't have which reasons why this doesn't make any sense also you can send the hooks evidence and reasons why they take that as well also our case always evidence as a temporary survival strategy which means that even if your critique is true to reasons why we definitely should refer also permanent money the perm alternative solves in all other instances it doesn't solve it all which reasons why we should get now your ethics must be unconditional or now onto the other property kind of like won't remember to the after saying the second there's no benefit that you can articulate to this either there's no solvency because definitely there's not articulate second 3 point you can the alternative strategy now to your link back in the theory one way this is the actual text of the evidence so that means we didn't have it there's no impact to this so you can send the roll about if friends are often the offense is 100% key to concede on the AC proper either we have 100% access to whiteness is the root cause for all forms of epistemic violence.
Are there any independent voters besides the case?
Yeah, there was the independent voter on like the underview proper. As to why side skirting substitute debate is an independent voter, you're actively excluding people of colored voices from the debate space.
How?
By running like super frivolous theory, like the one shell, the second shell.
Wait, how does that
exclude
people from the debate?
Yeah, so there were 2 independent reasons as to why you are side-skirting the discussion from actual substantive claims, and we also make an argument as to why you were definitely able to engage with a topical critique that advocates or that critiques our advocacy as that was like terminal defense on the shell, and then we also make the argument that side-skirting actual substantive claims about black oppression and oppression of people against people of color in the debate space is uniquely a form of silence. like just debate the substance of the app, like those parts were conceded.
Wait, so if we should debate the substance of the app, shouldn't like you not vote on this argument and just debate the rest of the substance?
I think we should debate. I think we say that substance is the highest layer.
Wait.
Was there a doc for that speech or not?
No, there's nothing. There's all like analytical off the floor.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't miss an email. There was.
Huh?
I just want to make sure I didn't miss
Yeah,
an
if
email.
you want me to send all the analytics,
No, that's good. I'll ask for it if I need it.
I'll just keep it going.
It'll be the pick, then in overview you can just float. I guess just float at the bottom of the pick. Actually, in overview you can float on the case on the underview.
Okay.
Then the app underview, and I think that'll be it. But I'll see.
Wait, so overview, you can pull on the underview and then the app underview?
After the pick,
Okay, so
starting on the pick.
starting overview, pick, underview.
Pick overview.
Oh, okay, I
on
see
the
what you're saying.
underview.
Okay, cool.
Hey, everyone ready? I'm going for the pick of framing issues that they have no solvency deficit to, so if I'm winning a risk that the counterpoint is mutually exclusive with the affirmative, that's sufficient to vote negative. I know normally permutations are evaluated as a yes-no question, i.e. it is or is not competitive, but in this instance they were super vague and light on this in the 1 hour, and insofar as they have no other offense on the counterpoint or reason it doesn't solve, that means if I'm winning any risk that the counterpoint it might be potentially be competitive, that's a reason to error negative. Insofar as you should never take the chance that the affirmative could potentially link to the dissent that we isolated underneath the counterpoint. So they need to win 100% that the permutation is the affirmative, and if they don't do that, that's sufficient to vote negative. Now the line by line of the counterpoint, they conceded it solves the entirety of the affirmative. It allows the surveillance of white candidates who are running for public office, which allows black people to engage in the counter case. But it is uniquely consistent with the affirmative because it says that black people shouldn't be forced to disclose information about themselves and be subject to the white case. For example, black people shouldn't be forced to disclose medical records that will cause white people to stigmatize them and blame it based on race racist stereotypes. That is an example of the white gaze that the counterpoint is able to resolve, but the affirmative value statement would force them to. This is, I'll preempt the 2AR on this. It's not a question of implementation, it's a question of the value that they endorse. The value that the affirmative endorses is one in which black people should be forced to, black candidates should be forced to disclose that information, which is a bad value to endorse, and the counterpoint is still a preferable value. Now the permutation proper first is that the plan says that they defend the whole value statement of the resolution, which implies that they would defend all candidates or candidates in general. They did not specify only white candidates, and it was very unclear, which means you should err heavily negative on this question. We pick out of black candidates, which would obviously be implied by the normal means of what whole resolution means, especially considering that none of their evidence specifies that it would only apply to white people, and none of their evidence is about the topic, which means you shouldn't let them go for this argument about the topic, meaning this. The topic, we should be able to you should decide whether or not the app is competitive based on what the topic, what the most reasonable interpretation of the topic is. If you think the whole resolution would imply that it's only white candidates, by all means vote negative. But if you think that the whole generic value statement of the resolution would imply candidates in general, that means that the counterpoint is competitive because it excludes black candidates from the value statement of the affirmative. Second is that the 1AR was super short on the counterpoint. They spent like 5 seconds and were pretty much incomprehensible, which means you shouldn't let them to blow it up in the 2AR. Insofar as I have no 3AR to be able to respond, and I have no idea what their arguments were on the counterpoint besides the permutation. Three is that the permutation is net worse underneath all of their arguments about the substance of the affirmative coming first. If it's true that we should read about the substance of the affirmative and that roll of ballots, the highest layer, that means you shouldn't allow them to shift their advocacy in the 1AR and co-op the negative advocacy. Just because I made a smart pick against this app that is super vague and doesn't really say anything. So if substantive education matters, that means that you should err negative. Last, you may be thinking the counterpoint was super short in the 1 and C and may not want to vote for it. Few reasons why this is not true. A point is that it co-ops all of the affirmative. We cross-applied all of their evidence that says the white gaze is bad and that counter-gazing is good. We're just cross-applying the affirmative to show why the counterpoint is net beneficial, which was why it was super short in the 1 and C, and we've explained why the app is net disadvantageous under their own affirmative because they force disclosure of black people, which allows for the white gaze, which proves it was not super short in the 1 and C. The point is that so this counterplan, it seems short in the 1 and C, but I explained it in the 1 and C. It was a cross-application of all of the app evidence, and they did not make any sense on this counterplan, so you shouldn't let them blow anything up. And if there's a blip I dropped, you should ask yourself the question of how I could have known what that argument was and whether or not the rest of my arguments responded. Now, there's independent voter, or the underview. All the other offs were conditional, so I'm not going for it, but I'll just answer the impact terms of theory. A point of substance is the highest layer. That means you should default to the rest of the substance debate. You shouldn't decide the round solely based on theory, because that means we never get an in-depth discussion of the affirmative advocacy, and every round is decided on theory being wrong. B point is there's no reason it's an independent voter. It's just a reason to reject the shells and return back to substance. Don't let them not draw a new warrant for why to drop the debater in the 2AR insofar as that wasn't in the 1AR. C point is their exclusion arguments don't make any sense. Every argument is somewhat exclusionary of the affirmative. For example, the CAP case says that the app's method is bad because it is based in capitalist modes of production. In the same way, topicality says that the affirmative model of debate is bad because it avoids predictable grounded stasis. Every negative argument has to disagree with the affirmative, which means sort of exclusions are inevitable, and the model of debate is untenable insofar as the negative always have to say the app is a bad idea, which is not exclusion or any sort of the things that their evidence is criticizing. And the rest of the arguments are just roll about outweighs. That's fine. I'll just answer like this frivolous theory argument if you think like A point is that if it's frivolous theory, that means we should just get rid of it and return back to substance. B point is it means that you should be able to answer it really easily and we can have the rest of the debate much easier. C point is that it was not frivolous theory. Full text bad is a really bad norm, and you can see their standard argument that it creates a massive prep to you. I'm not going forward in this round because you really screwed up on the pick, but it is not frivolous. It is not frivolous theory. It makes it wikis impossible to read and navigate, and you conceded the entirety of the abuse story. All you just asserted was just like gut check. It's frivolous, which is not a real argument, so they can't go for frivolous theory is exclusionary. And last, we don't exclude black participation in debate because under our interpretations we can still have black interpretations of debate and incorporate your theory. You just have to tie it to an implementation of an advocacy, and you just have to actually disclose in a way that doesn't make your wiki super messed up and impossible to navigate, which means they have no internal link to any of their impact turns. And worst case, you should default to strength of link. I'm crushing them on the counterplan. So if there's any doubt about these impact turns, then you shouldn't default to new 2AR explanation of how it functions.
Okay, I think I raised your timer because my timer doesn't go in seconds, but I have like 2:30 or 1:36. Sorry.
1:30.
Yeah. Not two. Where's the pick, and then really quickly on the kind of pick as well. Like that'll be 1 second.
Pick cut to
Ready?
So it's pick, cap,
Okay,
pick.
and then yeah, it'll be like really quick when we out, but it's also gonna be a pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Overview, Rex, you make a big mistake when you can see that the 1EC hijinks the cap game, so we co-opted all of your offense. You have to ask yourself who is winning. Both lane assumptions to be both the cap game and the 1EC proper, so let us have access to your offense, so we co-opt any of your offense, let us have access to the offense on the flow, just in related assumptions to me, you don't articulate any other role of the battle or why we should care about capitalism first. That means it operates under our role of the battle, that means all bodies need to be included in the class-based struggle, and that we solve for all of the capitalistic mindset outweighs on magnitude on the so the pick still has a net deficit. You can't vote off of this as well. All these net benefits are super new, but what he said in the 1EC, he said, don't let me enchant you with these new articulation of what the 1EC does specifically. Specifically the articulation of these and how they are material benefits insofar as he has no sovereignty advocate for the 1EC proper. Don't let him have any new, don't get any new credence or any new articulation proper. Now first extend the hijinks of the class-based struggle and the critique proper debate. So while we access the key office, we have a net benefit that the counterblend doesn't have. All blacks are excluded. Black bodies from excluded and black hands are excluded. They are also excluded from the class-based struggle of the capitalism critique, which reason as to why the capitalism critique we can never access the impact of unlimited violence against the class-based struggle. That was how the capitalism articulate. You got that also ways and if the case debate on magnitude as well. So that's a huge net deficit to the pick debate as well. Insofar as we're including black people from the struggle of the class-based violence and reason as to why the 1EC solves better for the negative, but that will also takes out all of your arguments. So why we're super big as well, because you say that also takes out your value argument. We don't think on the value, but the second argument that he goes for that's really big is how the resolution of the question of value, so the black people should be able to ask why the black people are being forced to disclose to the bad. Well, this is a totally controversial argument. We don't defend any implementation or feel like confirm the peak. We just say that yeah, it's a good idea as well. I say that disenchanting whiteness is a good idea, and then actually forcing and then actually having a white counter against all candidates would be a good idea. So so in terms of if we evaluate them, we would also vote affirmative on the peak debate as well. So you're definitely losing that debate as well. So also you can extend the evidence, but he said that none of the evidence was about white people. It's not about the topic, but there's our evidence heavily topical. You can check the Yancey evidence, the Hooks evidence at the bottom of the case, and also the other as to why we simply articulate, so why we should perform a counter against public officials that they occupy such a high space of government power that we should be able to that they are allowed to give gratuitous violence. You can extend how whiteness is invisible. that means that whiteness is literally commit unlimited violence against deviant bodies, which is reason as to why, which is reason as to why we also outweigh the case, outweigh the pick on magnitude, as well as the part of the affirmative is the only way that we can solve any of these problems in the first place. You have to start, that means you have to start with the standpoint of the first, that's the overarching question you have to answer, who is winning the substance debate? We are definitely winning. There was no net benefit, there's no net benefit to be. It also takes out the arguments of why the counter line was short. The counter was short because we all know you're going to have new articulation of in the 2 hours, so you should definitely reject them. These are definitely all new. You should ask yourself what was articulated in the 1 NC proper. There was no this proper, none of this proper. The only thing that you have to vote off is the substance debate. We are winning the cap game. That's why you can also extend that how the black bodies can still engage in for the white side that was said in CX and the 1AC and the 1AC proper as to why how black bodies and other black bodies. The Hooks evidence was simply articulated as to why how intersection of bonds can intersect as well. So even if black bodies can engage, they can still engage in forms of whiteness, like things like color blindness that are specific forms of bonds. That was articulated in the Hooks evidence. You definitely read it as well. So there are 3 net benefits that we're going for. One is the cap gate. We outweigh the case on magnitude. Second is that you can extend how the 1ECA is the prior question as to why black bodies can still engage in forms of whiteness. You can extend the argument as to why this is totally consequential. So even if you debate about who is winning the values debate, you're still going to vote affirmative.
You can do it yourself.